Hi everyone. So in this video I'm going to be going over the October problem of the month and specifically the first part of it. As you know, we're going to have the entire month of October to work on this problem, but it's a little bit of a long and complicated problem, and eventually you are going to have to do the write-up for this problem on page 2 and page 3. You don't have to worry about that now. That's why we have the entire month to do it. Right now, you should be focusing on these 6 getting started questions. On the first page, this is your task for the first week. So the first step, of course, you should read the problem, highlight any important information, and then just go through and answer these questions. Choose a price to sell the t-shirts at. This can be any price you want, but it's more helpful if you pick a price that makes sense. So pick a price that you think makes sense and just write that down. You can change it later if you want. Then choose a variable to represent the number of t-shirts sold. Again, that can be any variable you want, something that you will remember. Now, where a lot of people have been having trouble is writing an expression to represent the total revenue of the shirt sales and writing an expression to represent the total expenses of the shirt sales. I don't want to show you exactly what the answer to these are, so instead I'm going to show you an example with a different problem that I hope will help you figure out the answer to these two questions. Okay, so here we have a new example. This is just a business example. And I will read the problem first, and then we'll go through and figure out how to find the revenue and how to find the expenses. So, you are starting a company selling candy at school. You want to sell candy in Miss Smith's classroom, but she won't let you sell anything unless you pay her $5. You also pay a friend $10 to help you sell candy. You decide to sell the candy for $2 each, but you have to buy each piece of candy for 50 cents before you can sell it. So let's just go through and highlight the information that we think is important. So we have to pay Miss Smith $5. That seems important, so I'm going to highlight that. We decided to pay a friend $10, so I'll highlight that. The candy is $2 each, and we have to buy each piece for 50 cents. So for me, I like to write these out as a series of bullet points so I don't forget. Pay Miss Smith $5. Pay a friend $10. Sell candy for $2. Buy each piece for 50 cents. Okay, now we're going to go through and talk about how we could find the revenue and the expenses of selling this candy. So first things first, what is the revenue? Well, the revenue is all the money you're making from selling something. It doesn't include any of the costs. It's basically the money you get. It's the money you'll be able to hold in your hand. You might have to spend this money on your expenses, but it's all the money you're making. So this is the money you are making. Well, let's go through and think about a few examples. If we sell 10 pieces of candy, how much revenue do we have? Well, we can figure this out by noting that we're selling the candy for $2 each and multiplying that by 10 pieces of candy. So in this case, our total revenue would be $20. Now let's say we were selling, 50 pieces of candy. Same thing, our revenue is $2 for each piece of candy, because that's the price, times 50 pieces equals $100 of revenue. Now let's say we're selling X pieces of candy. This is the candy that we don't know how many we're going to sell. And this is what you need to do on the problem of the month. So if you don't know how many, we follow the exact same thing. $2 times X pieces of candy. And what does that equal to? Well, it's just 2X. If you sell candy for $2 each, your total revenue would be 2X. So this would be an expression that represents the revenue of the candy. Now let's go ahead and look at the expenses. The expenses are a bit more difficult to calculate. So again, what are the expenses? It's everything it costs to run a business. The costs to run a business. But we actually have a number of expenses in this problem. We have to pay Miss Smith $5. We have to pay a friend $10. Selling the candy, that's money that we're getting. That's part of the revenue. So we don't have to worry about that for expenses. But buying each piece for 50 cents, that's another expense. So we have 3 different expenses. Again, let's look at an example. Let's say we sold 10 pieces of candy. Well, what would our expenses be? Well, we have to pay Miss Smith $5. We have to pay a friend $10. And then we have to buy each piece of candy for 50 cents each. So that's going to be 0.5 times 10. Add this all up, it's 5 plus 10 plus 5. It's going to be $20 worth of expenses if we sell 10 pieces of candy. Let's take a different example. Let's say we sell 50 pieces of candy. Again, we still have to pay Miss Smith $5. We still have to pay our friend $10. But this time, instead of buying 10 pieces of candy to sell, we have to buy 50 pieces of candy to sell. So that's going to be 0.5 times 50. Again, that's 5 plus 10 plus, this time, $25 for the candy. And that means we're going to have a total of $40 worth of expenses. Now again, we'll ask the question, what if we have X pieces of candy? Same situation. We know we have to spend $5 for Miss Smith, $10 for our friend, and then 0.5 times, and this time it's going to be X, because we don't know how much candy we're going to sell. If it was 10, we'd put 10. If it was 50, we'd put 50. But we don't know, so it's X. So we put X in there. And that's going to make this expression equal to 5 plus 10 plus 0.5x. You can add the 5 and the 10 together to get 15 plus 0.5x. And this is an expression that represents the expenses no matter how many pieces of candy you sell, because you know it's going to cost you more if you sell more candy. So there's an example of how to figure out the revenue and the expenses. So the reason this is important to do if you're actually running a business is because the revenue you make, in this case $20 worth of revenue, you want that always to be more than the expenses. So if you sell 10 pieces of candy, you made $20, right? But you then had to spend $20 on expenses. So you actually didn't make any money. On the other hand, if you sell $100 worth of candy, you only have to spend $40 on expenses. So you made money there. So you always want the revenue to be more than the expenses. But when you're starting a new business, this isn't always possible. So what businesses do is they think, okay, I know I'm going to lose money at the beginning. How am I eventually going to make this money back? So they write an expression that we call a break-even equation, and they say revenue is equal to expenses. And they want to figure out when is this true. So in this case, our revenue is 2x. That is, we're going to say that's equal to our expenses, 15 plus 0.5x. And we want to figure out what is x equal to in this scenario. So we can solve this as we would any equation. Minus 0.5x on both sides, minus 0.5x. We're left with 1.5x equals 15. We can divide by 1.5 on both sides, and we're left with x equals, in this case, 15 divided by 1.5 is 10. That tells us that if we sell exactly 10 pieces of candy, then we will have broken even. We will have made as much money as we spent. And in fact, this is exactly what you can see above. When we had 10 pieces of candy, we had $20 in revenue, and when we had $20 worth of expenses. So when we sold 10 pieces of candy, we were exactly even. We hadn't lost any money, we hadn't made any money. So that's why 10 pieces of candy in this example is the break-even point. So I'm hoping this helps you all with the problem of the month. Again, this should help you answer questions number 3, 4, 5, and 6. If you are still confused, of course, you can send me an email. I would recommend going through this video one step at a time and pausing at each point. So watch me explain the revenue, pause, then try and figure out the revenue for the problem of the month. Watch me explain the expenses, pause, then try and figure out the expenses for the problem of the month. If you get stuck at any point, send me an email. We can set up a time to talk, but hopefully this will be helpful. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.